Hey everyone, it's Brandy and welcome back to my channel, Brandy Janae's Bookshelf. As you can tell from the title of this video, today I'm here to do my April wrap-up. So this will be a pretty chill video. It's a little on the later end than I prefer to start filming, but I have been trying to have a pretty productive day, so I've been getting stuff done all day. And when I finally got myself looking presentable to film, it's like 9 o'clock. But thankfully, I'm pretty sure that this video won't be too long because I have not read as much as I have in the past few months, which is, I guess, a good thing because I'm kind of like, I kind of took a break-ish. Not really, but in terms of what I'm going to be talking about in this video, I did. So with that being said, let me move over into my stats. So in April, I finished a total of 11 books. Over those 11 books, I read 3,983 pages with an average rating of 3.63 stars. I didn't have any DNFs for the month. 3 of the books that I finished were rereads. 6 of them were print books. I didn't finish any ebooks, and then 5 of the books that I finished were audiobooks. Just based on the stats alone, you can obviously see that I haven't read as much as I have in the past 3 months. I don't mind. I know that I kind of go back and forth through phases, and I feel like in the first 3 months of the year I read way more than I was expecting to each month. So I think this month it kind of caught up with me, and it was like me taking a step back and kind of just chilling on reading. I get in these moods sometimes where I'm like, I really don't want to do anything, and it was kind of a month for that. With that being said though, I did also listen to like rereads of like some of my favorite series. I tend to do this anyway. I think even last year I had a couple times where I reread some series and I just didn't track them because I reread them multiple times a year, because when I'm like in these moods, I'll try to watch TV shows, but I'm not really that big on that. And then I'm like, I need something to do, because when I get to that point, I'm literally just sitting there staring off into space at random moments, and I'm like, I need something to do. So at those times I will like put on a series. One of my favorite series started from the beginning, and usually I will go through a series, maybe multiple series. So one of them I ended up deciding to track, which I'll get into with my rereads. However, the other one I didn't, and I am still technically working my way through the series. So briefly mentioning it, I did also start the Mercy Thompson series like on audio, but I didn't feel like tracking it. I was kind of being lazy. Also, I was just like, it's not a huge deal if I don't, because I'm sure that I will most likely read it again, at least start it again before the end of the year. So I'm currently on book 8 or 9, I think, in the series. So basically what I'm saying is I did get a bit more reading done that I'm going to be talking about in this video, but because I didn't track it, I'm only going to be going over 11 books. Anyway, all of that rambling, I don't want this video to take too long to film, so that editing will hopefully be a little bit easier. So let me just go ahead and get into the books that I need to talk about for this month. So starting off with my rereads, and besides the Mercy Thompson series, this is the only set of rereads I had for April, and that was the Hidden Legacy series by Alona Andrews. Kind of a reason for this, I thought that the final book and the second trilogy as part of this big series was set to come out this month, but it got pushed back, and I think now it's not coming out to June. Basically, we are following this character named Nevada Baylor, who runs / owns a private investigative firm with her family. Before the start of the story, her dad used to own the company, and once he got sick, they sold the company to like this bigger firm so that they had money to pay for his treatments before he eventually passed away. So Nevada is like on a contract currently trying to pay off that debt that they have to the other company so they can, you know, become their own owners again. But at the beginning of the story, because of that contract, she ends up getting roped into this big conspiracy to bring in this guy named Adam, who is like one of the highly magical people, like the top tier magical person of his family, or at least one of them. And through working on that, she runs into another character named Connor / Mad Rogan, and the two of them are forced to work together, or really Connor kind of forces Nevada to work with him for his own reasons. And we are following them as they are, you know, they're set off on their original missions, but in doing that they end up finding out about this conspiracy, and we're following them as they learn about that, learn about some people that are behind it, but also trying to figure out what actually is going on, because every time they get closer to finding something out, they realize that there's a lot more going on than they originally thought. This is one of those weird instances where there is like a villain, but the villain is carried throughout multiple books. At this point, there are 5 books released in this series, and I think a novella as well. So the first 3 books is with Nevada and Connor. I did just reread the first 3. So I read Burn For Me, White Hot, and Wildfire is the order that they go in. I decided not to give them new ratings. I was originally, but honestly, this is kind of like an impromptu reread. I've been talking about this way too long, so let's move over into books that I read for the first time this month. So as always, outside of rereads and DNFs, I'm going to be going through things in rating order. And we're gonna go ahead and start off with the first 3-star read. This is actually just the first one that I finished, and that is House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas, the sequel to House of Earth and Blood. I don't know if I'm gonna give the best description of this because I'm gonna like super simplify it. This book starts off with Bryce and Hunt trying to find their new normal after basically saving Crescent City at the end of the previous book, but some things end up happening and they become involved in a rebel plan, and they have to decide, or really I say they, but I feel like most of this book is mainly focusing on Bryce, but basically they have to decide whether they're gonna sit back and just let things happen as they will, or if they're going to step up and fight the Asteri with the rebels. I am a little late to the game with this. I was really excited about it, but I think because everybody was getting it early, and or they were getting it, I guess technically on time, I had to wait like basically a week to get my copy, and then when I finally got it and I was hearing reviews, I was just like, okay, I need to calm down. I don't want this to be super hyped, because I would be really upset if I ended up not enjoying it, because I had it so hyped up in my head. And while I did enjoy the first book, I definitely feel like it did have its flaws. So I was really trying to like calm myself down before going into it, which thankfully I did, because I feel like if I would have went into it when I was super hyped about it, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it. And I feel like it already wasn't perfect. I'm probably about to be super nitpicky, but I'm kind of like one of those people who's back and forth, because I see the flaws in Sarah J. Maas's books and her writing. However, I really enjoy her characters and the way that she sets up the stories. There's just something that keeps bringing me back. So it's like not the worst thing in the world. This book ended up being about the same length as the previous book. Actually, I think it might have been 1 page more than the first one, and I felt like this one was a lot more unfocused, especially when you compare it to House of Earth and Blood. I feel like it's hard to talk about these because she always manages to make the end exciting enough for you to want to get to the following book, or at least as far as me personally. But I just felt like this was so meandering, and it didn't have like something that was kind of pulling you through the story, like a central theme pulling you through the story like the first book did. And I was just like, there's so much that was unnecessary. Like, I almost would have preferred if she would have just did like several novellas to focus on maybe some of these characters, because I don't feel like all of these characters' plot lines were essential to this book. Like, we didn't need a 100-page book, because honestly, when I'm reading series like this, while I don't mind having the sideline stories, I feel like I want it to feel like there's a reason for it. So while I did kind of enjoy Therian, I think that's the mermaid guy, his perspective, there was literally no point of having him there. Like, give him a novella if you really want to write about him. He didn't bring any benefits to the table in terms of the story. Like I said, I'm sure there was a few other things. I wish I had done a mid-month wrap up so I could have talked about this when it was fresh in my head, but I just felt like there were so many unimportant things that were brought up, and I was just like, why? Honestly, like, all I can think about is the end, because I was more invested in the end because of reasons. I think I might have talked about this in a different video if I upload. I don't know. I feel like I've said this before. Also, I wasn't really a fan. I'm pretty sure that multiple people have brought this up, but how Danica like suddenly had more things that she had did that didn't appear into this book. I think I would have been okay with it if it was something that had been brought up in book 1, and then it was just like an unanswered question, so we got the answer to it in this book. But all of a sudden it was just like, oh no, here's more Danica, we're not done with her yet. Like, her character is going to be on the page anymore, but she was still responsible for all of these things, other than having like this random plot point seemingly have a purpose. Like, that was the only reason I felt like Danica was responsible for this communication. And I didn't like the fact that it just like randomly appeared in this book without any hint of it beforehand. Like, there could have been like, what's her name, when Bryce had the flash drive in the first book, maybe there could have been one of those files that was encrypted so much where she couldn't have access to, or couldn't gain access to it, or anyone who tried to crack it, they couldn't get into it. And then maybe they have been running, you know, code on it or whatever, trying to crack the encryption at the end, or like some point in the previous book, and you know, that had just never gotten opened until now. And then it's like, okay, we finally cracked this, here's what's in here, this is how it's connected. Then maybe that would have made more sense to me, but it just seemed to come out of nowhere. And I was just like, okay, we finally got the closure from Danica. Now it's like, oh, actually no, she actually did more stuff, and we're gonna discover that now. And I was just like, it didn't make sense to me. Like I said, I was more invested in the ending, just because now it has me thinking about all kind of theories and stuff that will connect with her previous 2 series. So I'm pretty sure that I am going to do like a full like Sarah J Maas reread. I don't know if I'll finish it this year because I don't want to rush through it, but I feel like I'm going to try to at least start that. As much as I wanted to love this, I did not fall in love with this like I was hoping to. So I'm glad that I didn't go into this with too high expectations, because I wasn't too disappointed by the time I finished this. But I was still a little disappointed with the fact that we got all of this and it wasn't giving what I was hoping for. Also, the fact that no, it's not necessary, but I was expecting the romance to really kick off in this, because I feel like one of the reasons why she said I'm going to be moving to adult is that she wanted to be able to explore those more like intimate relationships. And all of that build up in book 1, and we barely, like, they were like avoiding each other. It was just a lot going on that I was a little upset with, and this got 3 stars. So like I said, I didn't hate it. I was more excited with the ending, and I was just like, I'm going to get what I want. I'm not going to say that because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't even started it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where the ending, or where this left off, how that's going to take shape and kind of affect the world going forward in the future, because I'm pretty sure that it was said that this was supposed to be like a 6-book at least series. So I'm sure that book 3 will be the one that like really changes a lot. Also, I'm wondering, actually no, because I think it's different timelines, so I'm not even going to talk about that. Kind of hinted at stuff, but okay, yeah. I'm trying to decide if I wanted to talk about something, but maybe that'll just be whenever I start the Sarah J. Maas reread. That could be something, if you decide to participate, can discuss in that. I've rambled on for more than enough time with this, and I feel like I barely said anything, but this got 3 stars. I was hoping for a lot more from this. Unfortunately, it didn't quite hit the mark for me, but I will still continue on with her series because I'm Maas trash, basically. I feel like I'm not a stan, but I do still enjoy, for the most part, her storytelling. I will be picking up book 3, which you'll probably have to wait 2 years for that, because if she continues with the way she's been publishing, it's probably going to be another like ACOTAR spin-off portion or standalone book coming out next year, if she publishes anything next year. I know she just had a baby, so I'm not sure if she's even working on anything. She probably is. She seems like the type that would constantly be writing. Right, let's go ahead and move on to my next 3-star read, and that is Wings of Ebony by JL. In this book, we're following this character named Rue, and after her mother is killed, she ends up being taken by her father, who she's never met before, to live in Gizon, I think it's how you say it. And she finds out that she's part god, part human, but she's really upset because he told her that he couldn't take her younger sister with them. At the beginning of the story, we're actually watching as Rue decides that she's going to break one of the rules of never leaving Kazan because she wants to go and visit her younger sister for her birthday. But while she's there, she ends up realizing that there is an evil that is kind of taking over her home neighborhood, and she realizes that not only is her sister possibly in danger, but all of the kids in her neighborhood. And then once she starts to discover more, she realizes that this same evil might also be trying to take over Gazan, and she's forced with using these powers that she never wanted in order to try to save not only her neighborhood where she grew up, but also the people of Gazan. I did enjoy the story, but it wasn't like a favorite like I originally thought it was going to be. There were a lot of elements that I really enjoyed about the story, and I appreciated the fact that there were also moments that didn't stray away from going too far just because it was YA, but I didn't necessarily care for the general plot line, I guess. There were so many other things that I think I cared about more, and just the way that it was set up, I was just like, okay, I understand, but it's not a favorite of mine. Probably most likely pick up the sequel, just get it from the library first before deciding if I want a physical copy, because as much as I enjoy looking at the cover, I don't see this being something that I would reread in the future, and I'm really trying to be smart about what I keep on my shelves, especially because moving with books is a hassle. Not that I plan on moving anytime soon, but I'm trying to like narrow down my collection to things that I want to hold on to, as well as things that I could see myself rereading in the future. And then the final 3-star read that I have to talk about is The Case Study of Vanitas Volume 3 by Jun Mochizuki. I talked about volumes 1 and 2 very briefly in my March wrap up. I probably won't talk too much more about this in this one, just because I don't have much to add as far as this series. It is like a steampunk manga series focusing on vampires in Paris, I think. This volume basically picks up at the end of volume 2. Our main characters were actually at this ball, and the vampires who were out of control started attacking basically, and our characters like are in the midst of that, and then after that some other things happen, but I'm not really going to get into that at this point. I think it's when I was really starting to get into the mood where I was just like, I don't really feel like reading anything that I currently have on my shelves. So I kind of forced myself through this one. I was trying to read the other two, that because I had checked out 4 volumes and I was trying to read 3 and 4. But after forcing myself to finish up 3, I was just like, I really don't feel like finishing off or trying to read volume 4 as well. This is a series that I feel like I definitely have to be in the mood for. I'm glad that I did try it from the library, and I'm sure that I will go back to it at some point. But it's just a series that I would at this point read just to see how it ends, because I'm curious with the way that it started. At least I'm curious about the direction it's going to go. But there's not too much that's happening in here that is holding my interest. I appreciate the vampires, and it seems like it's going to get dark at some point, but it's like too much humor at times laid over things, or maybe not humor, but one of the characters doesn't seem like he's taking things too seriously most of the time, and then all of a sudden there's like this switch and he's just like super dark, and he's like I'm actually out to get all of y'all. It's a weird dynamic going on in the story, and I want to continue, like I said, to figure out how it ends. I don't know if it's over at this point, but it's not gonna be like top priority at this point. So volume 3 got 3 stars. And then before I am completely out of the 3-star section, I did have one that I gave 3.5 stars to, which I definitely was not expecting this one to get 3.5, but that is Prince Freya volume 5 by Kiko Ishihara. I will admit I was kind of putting this off because after reading the first 4 volumes in the series, volume 4 was a little on the slower side compared to 1 through 3. Going into this one, I felt like it had a completely different feel from the previous 4 volumes. So if you haven't heard me talking about this series before, we are following this character named Freya. She's living in the countryside of the kingdom of Tyr with her mother, and she has 2 like older adoptive brothers. They were previously like slaves of the neighboring kingdom, I believe, and she ends up saving them and taking them back to her mom, and her mom raises them. And both of them, or the oldest of those 2 brothers, is actually like the knight of the Prince of Tyr, and his younger brother I think is currently in training. And we see them at the beginning of the story as the 2 of them come back to visit Freya. They came back for a reason, but we don't really get to find that out until after they're leaving. But once they leave, Freya ends up hearing some soldiers from the neighboring kingdom talk about how they're going to hunt down and kill the other brother. So she sets out to go find them to let him know, because obviously she doesn't want him to die. But once she gets to the kingdom, she ends up running into the Prince of Tyr, finds out that she actually looks exactly like him, and he ends up asking her to take over his role as the prince because he has been poisoned and he is literally on the verge of dying when she sees him. He says that he doesn't want the kingdom of Tyr to fall to the neighboring kingdom. They're currently at war with each other. She has her own reasons, but she does end up agreeing to this, and we're following her journey as she has to pretend to be the prince and what exactly that means, and her learning and growing along the way. The first 3 volumes is her like being thrust into this prince position, but she's also kind of having to lead soldiers in war, and completely different from what she's ever had to do previously. Volume 4 takes a little bit of a step back for reasons I'm not going to get into the full details, but this one almost seemed like side stories. Based off of the cover, I was like, volume 4 is gearing up for this one, and this, I felt like we really didn't have much going on. Like there were things happening, and I feel like it was more so of a setup, but I also feel like this could have been side stories. It's like 3 to 4 sections of them going to different locations and like what's going on there, and I don't know, it felt, like I said, very different from the first 3 volumes. I'm guessing that they're still on the mission to collect these different jewels from other neighboring kingdoms that they used to be allies with, but it didn't seem very clear that that's what was going on at the start of this. Maybe I was just like overthinking it because it's been so long and I didn't reread volume 4 before going into this, but it wasn't what I was expecting, and unfortunately I just wasn't a fan of this volume. You know, when you have series like this, there's bound to be a few volumes here and there that you just don't vibe with. Hopefully volume 6 picks back up with the type of story that I enjoy reading. I feel like this cover is very misleading. Like this, I feel like is more fitting to the fields of the story, but this, it seems like they're battling or something's going on more than what it was. Anyway, like I said, this one got 3.5 stars. Unfortunately, not it for me for this volume, but we're gonna move on to the next thing. Moving over into my 4-star reads, this is actually going to be the last section because once again I didn't have any new first time 5-star reads. The first of the 4-star reads is actually Clean Sweep by Alona Andrews. This one is following this character named Dina DeMille who runs a bed and breakfast, but she is special because she has magic abilities, I believe, and the inn that she's running also has magic and it also thinks for itself, so it's able to adapt to the needs of her as well as the guests that are staying there. The inns or the different bed and breakfasts that are at different locations are meant to be like a safe haven almost for different supernatural creatures. We're following her as she's like really trying to establish herself, find more guests to stay at the inn, but while she's doing that there are some attacks going on in the neighborhood by this unknown creature, and Dina feels responsible for the safety of the people living in her neighborhood. It's kind of a lot more going on. I feel like I'm about to explain this whole book because it's not that long, but she ends up getting involved with a werewolf that actually lives in the neighborhood as well as some vampires who come to town because they're tracking the beast. I think I'm gonna need to reread this when I'm at a better like personal mood because I feel like I wasn't completely in love with this one, but this one has a lot of different elements that I am really excited to explore in future books. I'm glad that I finally read this and I am looking forward to reading more of the series. This one got 4 stars for me. Moving on to the next 4-star read, another one I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on, but that is Skip Beat volume 46 by Yoshiki Nakamura. I knew this was coming out. I was waiting for it. That's pretty much why I decided to binge basically the entire series back in February, I think that was. I read like 42 volumes of this. This one pretty much picks up where volume 45 left off. If you don't want to hear any spoilers, just skip to what I'm talking about, the next book. It picks up right after Rin confesses his feelings to Kyoko. This is pretty much the pose that they left off in at the end of volume 45. It literally took us 45 volumes to get this, especially because Kyoko was like real dense and she didn't realize whenever she was talking to him in certain situations with him not knowing it was her that he was talking about her. So we finally get that confession, but nothing happens with it because they're both like, I actually have goals that I'm trying to pursue. He literally tells her there are things that I need to do before I can commit to this basically, or before I can allow myself to be with you kind of thing. So while I am confessing and while I don't want you to be with anybody else, I actually cannot be with you right now. It was a weird situation. It's very frustrating. I already knew this part of the story. I think I talked about this before, but I do occasionally, when I'm being like really impatient, I will like look online for scans. Some of them have English. Most of the times I will just scan untranslated pages just to see the artwork, to see if I can figure out what exactly is going on, especially referencing what I have already read. But I technically read this volume already and I was just rereading again because I had like a final copy. So I already read all of this. I think I might have read through the next volume or 2 as well, because I'm realizing this one was actually pretty short. It wasn't a whole lot in here, but after reading this, I realized that I actually read quite a few chapters. So I think for the next volume or two, like I said, I will just be rereading the same content. I will say that this is like a setup volume. I think we're getting to the final stages of Ren's conflict and basically what he's been working towards his entire career. And I made some connections that I didn't previously make with one of these characters, like a guy character who's about to make this big appearance in the series. I'm pretty sure that he is actually like Ren's enemy, or this guy who like did a whole lot to Ren, which is why Ren ended up moving from America to Japan and like changed his name and all of this, and why he is who he is now. And I'm sure that that's going to be a whole big thing, and it's probably going to end up being like some weird freaky love triangle thing, which if that's the case, I'm not looking forward to that. But I am looking forward to seeing how that plays out, and I want more of the series. I really want to wait until there's like 5 volumes ready for me, but I'm impatient and I can't wait that long. But I love this series anyway, and I'm already looking forward to the next one. Thankfully this year we're getting another volume. So for now, this one got 4 stars. The second to last book that I have to talk about is The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is a middle grade like fantastical novel. I'm not really sure. I know this one was super hyped a few years back, and I finally picked it up because I was like, I don't think middle grade is for me, but I'm finally getting to the point where I'm like, I think I can enjoy middle grade. But in the story, we're following this character named Morgan Crow, who was born on Eventide, I think, which is basically the unluckiest day for any child to be born, and any children that are born on that day are known to be cursed. And because of that, or as a result of that, she is blamed for anything that is going wrong in different people's lives in the town. It is believed that on, I think it's supposed to be actually on their 12th birthday, that any of these kids that are born on Eventide are going to die. There's not really a whole lot going on or with the explanation, but basically she thinks she's going to die on her 12th birthday. However, we're quickly approaching her 11th birthday, and I think the night of, or the night before her 12th birthday, some things end up happening, and it's like she is so unlucky now that she's about to be killed on her 11th birthday. But then this guy Jupiter North appears, and he offers her the opportunity to come with him to compete to join the Wondrous Society so that she can basically be in a place of honor. And we're following her journey through that process. And this, I feel like, while it wasn't like a new all-time favorite, I still really enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun. It was very whimsical. It was a bit longer than I would have liked, but I did listen to it on audio, so it wasn't that bad as far as, you know, me getting through it. I wish that it didn't spend so long on like the middle parts of it, because I felt like those aspects didn't really add anything to the story, especially with the fact that the majority of the story was like Morgan, like what's going on, what abilities do I have, like why am I here, what is my purpose here, and the guy Jupiter North is just like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And then him leaving for like weeks on end. Obviously it came back to the point where we realized why he was gone for so long and what he was actually doing, and I'm sure that more will be explored, because there are some things that are still left unsaid by the end of this. But I feel like it didn't need to be as much, because after a point it just got a bit repetitive, and I feel like we could have just skipped through. But I did enjoy this one. I'm glad that I read it, and I will be continuing on with the series. And then the final book that I have to talk about for April is Real by Kennedy Ryan. This is an adult contemporary romance, I believe. I almost want to say it's not romance, because I feel like the romance barely happened, but I think it is so categorized as romance. We start off this story following this character named Neva Saint. She is in her senior year of high school, and she pretty much has her life planned out, or she knows the direction that her life is going to go in. She's already engaged to her high school boyfriend. She knows that they're going to get married. They're going to live happily in their town. But one day she comes home and she finds out about a betrayal from her sister and her fiance. Basically they cheated with each other and now she's pregnant. Neva is really hurt by this and she's just like, there's no way I could stay here and be a part of this. So she decides to use a scholarship that she almost turned down. I think she had like a full scholarship for theater at a school, so she decides to take that and she leaves. And after that she doesn't really have a relationship with any of her family back home. Anytime that she went home it was super awkward. I think we passed like 10 years after that initial scene with her in high school. And once we come back to her, she is working as an understudy, I think on Broadway if I'm not mistaken. But the girl who plays the lead role went on vacation or something. I don't remember. Anyway, she gets the opportunity to go out and, you know, be the lead in this play or musical that she's been the understudy of. Hopefully you guys aren't upset when I don't remember all the details. But this guy who works in like entertainment, like in the movie industry, I think working on like musical scores and things like that. I don't remember if they work together or something ended up happening where they know each other, and he sees her post online that she's going to be able to go out and play the lead role for the first time. And he's in town, so he decides that he's going to go see her, you know, in this lead role for the first time. And he's also with his director buddy who they're actually about to start working on this documentary. And the director is currently searching for someone to play the lead role, and he's like really hard, and he was like, I'm not gonna get anyone who doesn't suit the role. I don't care how famous they are, I need the person who's gonna fit the role. So he ends up taking his friend slash the director to this play slash musical. Don't really know which one it was. And once he sees her, he's like, this is the girl who's gonna be the lead in this documentary that I'm doing. And we're following them as they start to work together, but also realizing that they have an attraction and how that's going to work out seeing as they work together. I feel like this book explored so much that I couldn't fully encompass everything in the description, or I would have been literally giving you a play-by-play of the entire book. So I would suggest you go read this. I listened to it on audio, which I think is the perfect solution because there are also singing parts in this as well. So in order to get those aspects, I would suggest that. However, this one not only, like I said, covers like work romance, but it also deals with some heavier topics that I definitely wasn't expecting going into it. I think I saw it mentioned when I first was reading about the book, but I completely forgot. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are dealing with cheating, not by our main characters, also dealing with distance from family because it seems like the family is supporting the one who needs it the most. That was kind of hard to read about. I'm not going to touch on that, but that was interesting to me. Also with our main character dealing with like physical illness, that's another thing that I feel like I very rarely, if ever, have read about, at least as far as like it being our main character and not someone that they know. We are following her as she's dealing with these different situations and trying to find a balance between work and that, but also like being stressed out at work is also causing flare-ups with her disease, and it was a lot. If you're gonna read this, be prepared. Like if you don't think this something you can handle, I would say pass on it. As much as I enjoyed the story, it's obviously not worth your mental health if you can't handle dealing with or reading about these type of situations. But this was so freaking good. Obviously it didn't get a full 5 stars. I think it was very close. I don't remember what the average rating is offhand, but I'm pretty sure it was like really close to getting 5 stars. But definitely my favorite book of this one. That was everything that I needed to talk about for April. I will say though that I did go into May with a couple books. So I was in the middle of Savvy Sheldon Feels Good as Hell by Taj McCoy. I have already finished this at the time of filming this video, so that's like my first thing finished in May, at least the first one that I'm documenting, because I am still reading the Mercy Thompson series. that's a whole nother thing. I am also still currently in the middle of Assassin's Apprentice. I'm hoping to finish this week, fingers crossed. I've been, like I said, in the Mercy Thompson. It's got me in a chokehold right now. So I think until I finish off that series, I won't be getting through this one as quickly as I would like. That is everything that I have to talk about in this video. But let me know what you guys ended up reading in April. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, as well as subscribing if you have not already. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you again in the next one. Bye.